Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. Excuse me for my throat clearing. This is going to be a shorter, simpler review. This is of another Walt Disney Classics collection piece. It's from the classic The Sword in the Stone. This is called Seizing Destiny, and it's number 215 out of 1,963. 1963 obviously is a homage to the year that this movie was made. And it depicts, the climax of the movie when Walt, also known as Arthur, runs to try to find a sword for his brother for the tournament. And he's desperate, he can't find it. And so, of course, not knowing really anything about the legend and the myth, he simply sees a sword seemingly stuck in the anvil for the taking, and then he seizes it, and then, of course, becomes the King of England. I have a lot of memories of this movie. I saw it myself for the first time a long time ago, maybe 40 years ago, maybe a little bit less, but it was a long time ago. I was just a kid, and I remember at that time I didn't really understand the whole concept of re-releases. So a lot of Disney movies, that I saw, that I thought I was seeing, for the first time, of course, in actuality was a re-release. Disney used to do that quite a bit with their classics, where every once in a while they would re-release on the big screen. And I do kind of miss that, because nowadays, of course, the algorithm has changed so drastically, and everything's about streaming. The Bob Chapek, who was recently, replaced and let go by the Disney Corporation, he was one of the pioneers of the idea of taking things into and out of the vault, so to speak. And he was the guy who first came up again with this concept, I think, of creating, artificial demand. The first person to sort of weaponize FOMO, right? FOMO, fear of missing out. And so you would have situations where a movie would be released and then people would see it on the big screen, or you would have a DVD or Blu-ray release for quote unquote limited time only before it would go back again into the vault, and who knows when it would be released again. So it created this sort of artificial frenzy, this fear of missing out, and people would buy them because they didn't want to miss out. When in reality, once you flood the market with enough of these DVDs and Blu-rays, you can very easily get, even sealed copies for a reasonable price after they're supposedly returned to the vault. And so I miss those days in the sense that I do enjoy watching, Disney classics on the big screen. There's just something special about them. Kind of relives their childhood, have the nostalgia for it. I wouldn't mind watching like a Peter Pan or a Sword in the Stone, Beauty and the Beast, etc. on the big screen, and not just at the El Capitan. I know that's the Disney-owned theater in Hollywood, for instance, but like semi-larger releases. But when everything is streaming and they're all available at home or anywhere really you go, if you have a Disney Plus membership or account, they stopped doing that. So anyways, at that time I was just a kid, and I thought I was seeing it for the first time, but it really was one of the re-releases. And I don't know why the memories stuck with me so much. At the time, we were a poor family, immigrants, and my parents would clean houses, for some extra money on the weekend. And so I remember, for some reason, I don't have a lot of memories from so far back, when it was like literally close to 4 decades ago. But I remember that it was a weekend, and we were cleaning a home. They were housekeepers, and I think the idea was that I think we were going to watch this movie after, they finished cleaning the house. It took about half a day. And I forget who watched it with me. I don't know whether it was my mom or my dad, but I do remember very clearly that it was, on a weekend after we cleaned house. And I remember just enjoying the movie very, very much. I mean, the whole adventures of Walt and Merlin. At the time, of course, I was too young to appreciate King Arthur and all of that. So I just very much enjoyed the movie at face value, which is like, about a young boy himself, adopted or an orphan and a bit of an outcast and bullied. I kind of identified with that a little bit. And of course, eventually becoming the King of England. It definitely, was very memorable for me. And this was the most memorable scene in the movie. And I'll never forget that sort of magic where, he grabs the sword and then I think it was like the sun or the light. There was a light that bathed him as he, pulled that sword out. So because of that, this was a scene that I kind of wanted to add to my classics collection for a while, but I just never got around to it because, as you can imagine, there's so many amazing pieces from that collection. You can't get them all at the same time. And so it was something I'd always kind of had my eye on. I was never ever able to really get it. I never got around to it. And so finally, I did find this for a, very, very decent price on eBay. And I pulled the trigger. It was well packaged and came. And so I finally have it after nearly 40 years. And let's take a look at it. So you have the base. You can see my fingers. So it's not a huge piece. But of course, as with all Walt Disney Classics collection, or almost all Walt Disney Classics collection pieces, this is made out of fine art porcelain. You can see the snow effects and the rock. If I go a little bit closer, you can actually see the slow little minute details, the pitting, okay? And then, of course, you have the snow effect. The environmental effects for porcelain is somewhat limited. I mean, there's only so much you can do. You can see a little bit of dust here that I was going to rub off, but there's only so much detail you can do for this type of thing. But remember that this is essentially, porcelain. It just adds quite a bit to it. It's a perfect representation of the animated scene. And you have, of course, the sword in the anvil or the sword in the stone with the snow effects. And then you have Arthur or Wart in his hand, accurately sculpted as he's about to jerk it free. You can see his ill-fitting robes, and this is actually glossed, so it looks really, really nice. There's a little bit of opalescence there almost. Just want to kind of show that. You can see the little details of the fingers, his scarf, his hair, and then of course his facial expression. He's looking at the light almost. He's distracted by the light of destiny, so to speak, as he pulls the sword out. As with all of the Walt Disney Classics collection pieces, they are just such perfect three-dimensional representations of the scenes from the movie. And it was for the longest time, I didn't really appreciate how they made these. Only later, I realized, like a sculptor actually had to sculpt this out of clay or, resin. This was before 3D printing, right? Before 3D sculpture or Z-sculpt, where nowadays, a lot of statues are now sculpted, virtually on a computer screen and then printed directly, which has really sort of revolutionized the statue industry. But back then, all of this had to be done by hand. And then, it was then gradually taken apart and then reproduced in porcelain with the painting and the glazing and the firing of the kilns. This is a art form that is, in my opinion, is essentially, like lost. For those collectors out there who collect, say, Capodimonte or Lorenz, Capodimonte, or Armani, Giuseppe Armani, or Yadro, or Royal Doulton, those type of things, which is still porcelain art. They still exist to some extent, but porcelain, with the amount of accuracy and detail that the Walt Disney Classics collection provided, that's gone forever, so to speak. And as these pieces get broken, as they disappear, as they become part of forever homes, it just gets a little bit more rare with each succeeding year. In a sense, I'm very fortunate to have lived at a time when this collection did begin. It's, I think, well over 20 years old now, and so they're still reasonably attainable for most of them. But as generations pass, it'll get harder and harder, and they're certainly never going to make something like this again with that type of attention to detail and accuracy in fine art porcelain. The details of the faces are so sharp and so clear. It really is, an amazing sort of thing. I'm always, and those of you who are collectors of the Walt Disney Classics collection can attest to this. I'm always amazed at how cool they look, and for me at least, how they always just remind me of the scene from the movie. It's almost like like your hand, like a magic hand took the scene and then just basically removed it from the film itself and put it on the table in front of you. So I really love, again, the paint, the attention to detail. Most of the time you'll see pictures of people when they sell it. You'll see this shot like this, or occasionally you may see a shot like this. But it's very rare that you'll see the shots from behind Walt or in front. And it's quite interesting when you do see that, how narrow it is. Again, just sort of almost like a painting. When you get this view that you'll never see from a painting, which is the view from the side. But normally, when you see it from the flat, from here or here, you get a very distinct feeling. But in reality, when you look at it head on, he's very, very narrow, actually. Not much wider than the actual stone itself, in point of fact. But yeah, there you go. Just quite happy with this, to finally add this scene. I only collect scenes, of course, that mean something to me. So it's kind of neat to finally have this, after so long, be part of my collection, part of my memory. Maybe someday, my kids will see this review and be inspired to watch The Sword in the Stone themselves, to see why I liked it so much. So there you have it. Decided to break up the Predator reviews and the lightsaber reviews with an occasional Walt Disney Classics collection review as well. I might be putting up a few old Sideshow premium formats, stuff like that, as I begin to shift my attentions to different things. A lot of different things I can review and talk about. So I hope you enjoyed that. This is, again, Seasoning Destiny from Disney's classic Sword in the Stone. Until next time, do take care.